Welcome to Charts Today. My name is David Linton, and today's edition for Friday, the 8th of February, comes to you from London. And the dollar continues its march up the hill. We had a little bit of a dip yesterday, but it's pushing on to make new highs again this morning on that short-term chart. Just a smidgen away from activating this 3% upside target. Hitting some medium-term resistance on the half a percent point and figure chart, but we are just looking more and more bullish as we wander into that bullish territory. So remembering this is my weekly, my daily, and my 60-minute chart. So my long-term, my medium-term, my short-term view. And this data coming from Thomson Reuters Icon, or if you're a Metastock Zenith user, it's Metastock Zenith. So looking at the euro, we're sinking lower against the dollar. We've activated that downside target already, 3% lower, and this big downside target now looking quite worrying as well. So dollar strength, euro weakness is the key. Against the Japanese yen, the dollar just holding its gain there. Sterling down further this morning, still now looking pretty bearish against the dollar on all three time frames. Downside target of 128. Looking at against the euro, sterling actually a little bit stronger this morning, that weaker euro weighing there, and against the Swiss franc, sterling looking quite strong as well. Against the Aussie dollar, sterling looking relatively strong, with the Aussie dollar falling, with the spectre of interest rates falling in Australia. Bitcoin still bearish on all three time frames. The S&P 500 index, US market sold off quite heavily last night. We saw the S&P down 1%. The short-term trend is still intact, but there are some signs that we are just starting to see a little bit of weakness creeping in, a little bit of a gap down there on the Nasdaq. We saw that candle yesterday gapping lower, and we saw that here in the 60-minute chart as well. We just gapped lower. So we do have a new downside target, not yet activated on the short-term chart, so it'll be critical as to what the market does today. The Dow was down 0.9%. The Russell 2000 index also falling away, coming back to test support on the short-term chart. The futures this morning, the S&P future is down 0.25%, and that is in bearish territory on the short-term chart. And the Nasdaq E-mini also ticking bearish yesterday, so we're down 0.4% there yesterday at the moment. So it does suggest that we will see the futures signaling that the US will open lower. The FTSE 100 is a bit higher this morning on that weaker sterling, and so we are up about 1/3%, but we are seeing sell-offs in other markets. The mid-caps is little change, down a very small amount, and the DAX is actually also down a small amount. The CAC Quarante is actually up 1/3%, so we're seeing some relative strength there. So Europe's fairly mixed this morning. The Japanese market fell. The Hang Seng and quite heavily down 2%, so we are just seeing that turning short-term bearish. And the Hang Seng we're seeing also is just holding on to its short-term bull trend. It was only down very slightly. The Chinese market, back after quite a long time away, we saw was up 1.3%, so some quite good strength showing there. The Sensex was down 0.7%, but still looking bullish on all three time frames, and the Australian market continued to stay bullish, although it was off 1/3%. Brent crude this morning sitting at 61.50, so we're in bearish territory there, and WTI also below the cloud on the short-term chart, so oil just weakening slightly. US nat gas was up 1.5%, but it's really in the doldrums at around $2.60. Gold sitting at 1308 this morning. Did go as low as 1303 yesterday, but just hasn't managed to get back into bullish territory on the short-term chart. So we are just seeing a pullback after a pretty decent run in gold, so that's no big surprises. Strong dollar not helping, of course, and silver much the same picture as you might expect. US 10-year yields sitting steady at around 2.65%, so still bearish on the yield there. The picture really has changed quite dramatically in the last few months. Taking a look at the individual stocks, if we look at the Nasdaq, we just look at the bellwethers. We saw Google was down 1.5%, Amazon was down just over 1.5%, and Apple was down nearly 2%. So we are just seeing a little bit of a selling coming in on the technical majors. Facebook was down 2.4%. And if we look at some of the other ones, Netflix was down 2%, Tesla down 3%. So we have seen some pretty big falls last night there, and Microsoft relatively strong, only down 0.7%. So quite interesting there. The Aussie market looking pretty strong. News Corp was up 2.7%, so looking better there. Looks like they're just coming through for a recovery. And we look at Evolution Mining Group. They're continually looking pretty strong as well. So we did see some quite strong showings there. Beach Energy Limited were down 9%, and Domain Holdings down 6%. So still seeing some stocks hitting new lows. So it's not a recovery across the board by any means. China was strong, as we said, so we can see that we had very little red in the Chinese market. The Nifty 50 in India, just ranking by percentage, we can see we had mostly falls. Bharti Infratel was up actually 5%, looking like a really good medium-term recovery. Has work to do on the long-term chart. We can just see that starting to roll up, and that's also showing up in the relative performance. Looking on the downside, Tata Motors down a massive 17%, and they have been lower in the day, so it's been pretty hard going there, and Vedanta as well. And here you see the live pricing coming in from Yahoo Finance. The Nikkei was pretty bearish as well. We only had a handful of stocks really rising there. Looking over to Europe now, the FTSE 100 index this morning, we've got Smurfit Kappa up 1.75%, Micro Focus up 1.6%, and Barrett Developments up 1.3%. Some of these charts starting to look like quite good recoveries, but of course, stocks like Persimmon had a pretty bad year last year, have started well this year. We can see of making that medium-term recovery. Sage, similar picture after a bad year last year, just starting to come through on the medium-term chart. And Burberry also not quite through yet, but we are seeing some recoveries. Long-term support being met. Medium term, we're breaking through to bullish. The relative not quite as strong as we'd like to see, maybe. And looking on the other side, again, the live price is just coming in from Yahoo there. Looking at the other side, we've got Melrose down 2.79%. And Smith and Nephew down 2.7%, despite the fact their chart looks pretty good with really good upside targets. So this is one of the better looking charts. Have outperformed the Nasdaq last year by 30%, so quite key. TUI had a terrible day yesterday, and this morning they're down a further 2%. So that weekly candle really showing there. The FTSE 250, looking at the mid caps in the UK, we've got Petrofac up 14%, so they've got a big jump this morning after a terrible dive yesterday, so that's little respite there. Serco Group up 2.9%, so again we're just starting to see recovery here. That's looking actually quite an interesting recovery situation. Taking a look at the downside, we've got Beasley Group, Rank Group, and again here we see the live pricing coming in from Yahoo Finance. Taking a look at the Euro Stock 600, again just ranking by performance. Dometic Group in Stockholm looking pretty strong this morning, up 13.5%. Not quite yet bullish on the cloud, but looks like a potential turnaround situation. And on the other side of the coin, we've got GEA Group in Germany struggling and heading lower to new lows there. So we are still seeing stocks capable of making new multi-year lows. So it's not all recovery. That's it for today. Until Monday, happy charting. See you there.